Welcome back to the next episode of the Critical Moves podcast. I'm Al, I'll be your host, and today, or tonight, I'm joined by Jack. Hello, Jack.
Hello, Al.
And the legend that is Timothy.
Oh, come on now. Hey guys, how you doing?
It's always so nice to see you. Sorry, Jack. It's always nice to see you, Tim. You're just the light of my life.
Oh, you're cute.
Get a room.
We're in a room. You just turn around and face the wall. If this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, please do us a huge favor and follow on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And if you're a regular listener, welcome back. Please share this episode with someone who you also think might enjoy it. Today, we're going to be looking at Paradox Interactive. Tim will remember back in episode 12, Tim, Nuno, and I did an episode called The Games of Paradox Interactive, where we looked at, well, it's obvious, the games of Paradox Interactive. But today I wanted to have a bit of a deeper dive, a more critical look at the studio itself. Because there's been some controversies recently, hasn't there, Jack?
Yeah, there has. And I think if you just take a look at the previous episodes we've had on the podcast, we love to talk about Paradox and strategy games. They go hand in hand, but man, have we had some things to say about their recent releases.
Alongside Creative Assembly, Paradox are probably the number one strategy game developer, publisher. So what's gone wrong recently, Tim? Any opinion on that?
I have lots of opinions on that. But yeah, if I would have to put it down to something, I would say that they haven't streamlined too much. They're a little bit all over the place, and they're releasing. As you know, as you noted before, as we all have, a lot of DLC, and they don't have, I think, a good schedule to release games and release DLC and deliver a finished product in one streamlined go. So I think we get a lot of mess. I think a lot of people get really frustrated with it, and a lot of DLC seems like it's a bit of a cash grab. So I would like them to cut out quite a bit and deliver more games, but finished and polished, yeah.
Are Paradox games ever finished? Because their entire philosophy seems to be they release a game and you pay $50, $60, $70, whatever it might be for that particular game. And then you're on the hook for hundreds of dollars or hundreds of pounds worth of DLC. And that seems to be their strategy or their philosophy, is just release a base game and then milk the audience for every penny that they've got by just releasing DLC after DLC. I mean, is that an effective strategy from a business perspective? Is it an effective strategy from a consumer perspective? Do people enjoy that kind of approach?
I am a big Paradox player myself, so obviously I have fallen into that quite a bit, and I enjoy the game they make, and I don't think there's another video game developer out there that makes games quite anything like what they make. So I am quite biased in that way. I do want to point out that they do have free portions of the DLC that everyone enjoys, and usually they're like the biggest, most important parts of the DLC. And then I feel like it offers the opportunity for people to sponsor the continuous development that they do on these games. And these are huge games. I do want to say these games are like way bigger than many other games out there, and that probably require a lot more development. But are those excuses? I don't know.
I don't know whether they're excuses. I mean, when I was preparing for this episode, I looked to see what Paradox games were, or what the games of Paradox Interactive were, and my two most played games are City Skylines and Stellaris, with I think 6,000 hours in one and 7,000 hours in the other. It's ridiculous. So I've put 13,000 hours into two Paradox titles. So it's difficult for me to be overly critical of a studio which has given me so much enjoyment. But then when I look at the way that they handled the whole situation with Colossal Order and City Skylines 2 and this they manufactured, or it's a mutual decision to split from Colossal Order. It wasn't. It was a purely financial business decision to do that. And I guess I find myself torn because I really enjoy their games, but I really don't like the practice that they use. I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me.
Welcome to capitalism, I guess, and to me, that's a big reason to get so much profit-driven decision making out of video games, because it gets these kind of outcomes.
I think Paradox's DLC and content strategy is actually pretty consumer friendly on the more positive side. I think that when you look at games these days, something that people clearly want is almost quantity over quality in some cases. But something that Paradox seems to somewhat consistently deliver on is across multiple of their flagship titles that maintain a player base for a long time. Stuff we talk about all the time on the podcast, like Stellaris, Victoria 3, EU, as well as Hearts of Iron. I mean, when you look at those games and you see their most recent DLCs, the ones that generally suffer the most are the historical games like Hearts of Iron and Crusader Kings, especially when they release DLCs for specific parts of the world. Those are going to get review bombed by those parts of the world. But when you look at these flagship titles, they're not really, they're producing the quantity that people want, but they're not actually sacrificing the quality for the most part either. I think we've even seen in cases like Stellaris where their DLC practices were worse at the start and have only actually gotten more consumer friendly over time, or more quality over time. But that's my personal opinion. I feel like it's kind of like the Sims problem, where for those who are unfamiliar, EA has been developing The Sims for years, and their latest release was The Sims 4, which is quite old at this point, and they've recently, behind closed doors, canceled full development on The Sims 5 because they cannot leverage what you would also refer to as the Paradox problem. They've produced so many DLCs that have completely updated game mechanics for The Sims 4, a much beloved game, that it's just impossible for them to innovate on it and make a Sims 5. And in the case of that, we talk about, why isn't there a Stellaris 2? Are they going to be interested in making a Crusader Kings 4 that actually innovates on the things that they've added to Crusader Kings 3? So it's things like that that prevent innovation, and they're hurting those franchises in the long run, because we've seen what's happened with City Skylines 2. But as far as when the games actually come out, you can expect to get years and years of consistent content for a game you purchased the first time, and while over its lifespan you'll have spent more than the average game. It's a little bit easier, if there's no other good science fiction strategy games, to drop a couple bucks on a Stellaris DLC.
I think maybe there's a little bit of Stockholm syndrome that kind of kicks in here, because it's what they've always done. It's what we've always accepted. And I think that players now, they expect a game to be launched, and they expect it to maybe not be great when it's launched. There might be some bugs, might be some problems. But that's Paradox, so they kind of forgive it, because they know that deep down the core product, despite its issues, is probably going to be good once they get around to fixing those bugs. My issue is this, though. It's like, so I went onto Steam before we started this episode, and I looked at Stellaris, and Stellaris is one of my most favorite games ever. And if I was to come brand new to Stellaris today, and it isn't discounted at the point of recording now, I think it's £34.99 to buy the base game. To buy all of Stellaris would cost me £389.59. Now, if you try to sell a video game for nearly 400 quid off the bat, nobody would buy it. So is this their way of just being able to get as much? And I know, Tim, you're going to say, well, welcome to capitalism. But yeah, I get that. But it just seems like, why can't we just get a game that works and is feature rich and is really, really good at point of release? Because it also seems that this reliance on DLC also impedes their ability to work on new games as well. There's apparently nothing that I can find that's in development at the moment for Paradox, other than DLCs.
Yeah, I guess they kind of use the audience as well as testers, and they release a game knowing it will be finished, knowing that people will test it out and people will bring out all the things that they don't like or that are not working, all the bugs. And so basically they're getting their audience to bug test the game for them. And also even I think they do listen quite carefully to what players like or don't like about the game and then adjust it in the DLC that comes up. It does make it feel a bit and dishonest because they don't say it's early access. They don't say this is an unfinished product. So someone that doesn't know Paradox Interactive sees a game coming out, hears their friends say, "Oh, Paradox Interactive is make cool games." A new game comes out, they buy it. Imagine someone that's never played any Paradox Interactive game buys EU5 at release and is like, "What is this? What this is not a finished game."
And most Paradox veterans are going to say, it might be unfinished, but don't worry, you're going to get
Yeah,
loads of DLCs which will
yeah,
finish
yeah.
it. And it's like, but I've just paid however much, $40 for this game. Yeah, but you're going to need to pay another several hundred more dollars before you get the finished products. And it almost seems, I think you said dishonest, and I think that's a really good word to use. And because we are so ingrained into the Paradox ecosystem, I mean, I have loads of DLCs for Stellaris, I have loads of DLCs for City Skylines, because I was like, oh, I want bridges and ports, I want financial districts, I want biogenesis. So we're used to it. We understand. So I guess we just kind of get sucked in and we go along. But it just in researching this episode, it just feels wrong. I almost feel like I've been taken advantage of, and I knew what I was getting into. But when I bought Stellaris way back when, 10 years ago or whatever it was, I didn't anticipate that I'd be on the hook for 400 quid in order to have the entire thing.
So I don't know what their business model should look like if they want to make these huge games that they keep developing on for years and years after release. I think they're trying out subscription models as well and season passes and stuff like this. So they're looking at alternatives, but I don't know what other business because I don't think they could sell the game for 200 euros and be like, okay, this is the full game. You get everything, and it will be updated on for years to come. Like, I don't think people will put that down. So, and this kind of allows to have players pick and choose how much they invest in the game or not. They can try out the game without the DLC to see if they like it or not. I think a pure subscription plan people would also not like. People like to own the game rather than, a subscription model. So I think the communication can be better. I think they could cut out a lot of DLC and streamline the developments to make something a little bit more on point rather than stringing it on for years and years and like finding all this weirdest, most random DLC possible. But I don't think another business model would work very well.
I think you could forgive them if the DLCs were all fully fleshed out and awesome and generated huge amounts of content. But a lot of my Stellaris DLCs that I bought were like species packs. So there's no new content for the game. It's just, or very, 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 very minuscule amounts of new content for the game. It's just you can have a plant man rather than a fish man or something like that.
Yeah, I'll be the first to say that something like the species packs and Stellaris are my least favorite of their DLCs and are things that I usually would avoid buying if I had to go through and purchase every one of them again. I probably just wouldn't purchase most of the species packs. I think if you look at the whole thing on a big scale, the Stellaris that released at launch, as far as I remember, meets the expectations and promises they made for the game pre-release. So the game you paid for at the time was the game that they promised you. The first expansion they came out with, though, Utopia, was the Stellaris that we deserved, and is generally the first DLC that people tell you to buy is still the first real expansion for Stellaris because it adds in so many core gameplay mechanics you need for the rest of your time playing the game. I mean, mega structures, ascension perks, everything. And so from that point, the fact that the DLCs have gotten much better, I just think that to be fair to Paradox in this point, or I guess as a consumer, I'll go out of my way to say that the DLCs we're getting now that are innovating on Stellaris are creating a sci-fi strategy game that we would not have gotten 10 years ago, and we wouldn't have gotten necessarily with the Stellaris 2 or 3 by this point either. I think those are necessary for us to have the full experiences that we get from playing things like Victoria 3 and Crusader Kings and Stellaris today. But I do think it says a lot about their real strategy, which is to work on these flagship titles, but they're publishing so many different strategy games experimentally or other games experimentally that aren't paying off for them, right? Like Lamplighters League, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Those are not things that are going well for them, and I think that's making them double down on their games as a service strategy rather than investing in these core experiences, because even things like Surviving Mars were successful at the time, but they're not strategy games that really stay in the conversation for most people.
I'll try and explain this as best I can. So the situation with Valve is, people, and I know we're a strategy game podcast, but I love Half-Life 2. I think it's fantastic. And people are saying, when will we see Half-Life 3? And I don't think we ever will, because Valve know that at the moment they take 30% of everybody else's games when they sell them. So why would they want to take a financial risk on releasing or developing Half-Life 3 in order to release it and risk it not being successful and make a loss? And a Paradox may be in the same situation where they say, rather than developing a new game where you've got risk, release a DLC for an existing game where you've already got an established player base, you've already got people that are actively playing that game all the time. We can see our analytics, we know how many people are playing it, we know how many people have bought our existing DLCs, so therefore we can kind of project how many people will buy the next DLC. And we know how much it's going to cost because it's not a full game. Core mechanics are already there, the core code is already there, we don't have to do a lot of work in order to produce a DLC. Are they maybe playing it safe by releasing DLCs rather than developing new games? And is that indicative of some maybe financial pressures that the studio's under?
So they did try out a bunch of franchises in the end, right? Like we have quite a few now, and I think what was the last one, Imperator? And if I remember correctly, that was really, really terribly received at launch. I still receive a lot of updates, and I haven't tried it recently, but some people have told me it's a lot better now. But I guess they did try something new and then got punished for it in a way. I mean, punished because they didn't release that great of a game, I guess. I mean, if the players don't like it, then that's on them. But I want to consider how the development cycle works for them. I mean, they need to keep on developers, artists, designers, and everything like that on hand at all time. And then I think also on release, they're not entirely sure how good the game is going to be, and not sure which direction he needs to take after release, because I think it's incredibly difficult to make these grand strategy games and make them very fun. And so I think their idea is that they're going to release a game, keep it in development for a long time, and kind of use the people that they have on hand to keep developing it. But that means it takes some time. You don't immediately on release know exactly how you're going to change the game, what you're going, which direction you're going in. So these are things that take a lot of time, and you have all these people on the payroll at that time as well. So the cost of development and so on is like concurring. So I think it makes sense to have these really big games that are developed over a really long time. But then this is the result of that, I would say.
A lot of what Paradox do is they have the satellite studios attached to them, don't they? Like Iceflake, we've just taken over City Skylines 2 development from Colossal Order. Was it Hairbrain Studios? Was that one? Were they involved with the Lamplighters League? I think, and there's many others where they seem to not pick on, but they seem to attach themselves to smaller development studios. And I guess by doing so, they minimize the risk to the Paradox parent company, because if the game fails, they can just get rid of that studio and keep the core intact, which is survivalist thinking. and I'm not gonna fault them for that. But I think that the idea that they are taking risks might be a bit of a falsehood. I think that they're getting other people to take the risks for them. I mean, Colossal Order is, unless a miracle happens, Colossal Order is finished as a company. I think we discussed this on an episode a few weeks ago, Jack and I, after we did our City Builders episode. Someone came into Discord and gave us loads of information on what's happened with Colossal Order and what happened with the relationship with Paradox. If you want to know about that, come and have a look on the Discord and you can read it all, because I'm not going to bother to read it all out here. But ultimately, Iceflake Studio is just down the road from Colossal Order. They're in the same city, a couple of minutes away on public transport. So Paradox take the license for City Skylines away from Colossal Order, give it to Iceflake Studios, and then just poach all their staff. So Colossal Order is finished. And the CEO of Colossal Order, City Skyline, was her baby. That was her project. Is what she always wanted to do, was make this city builder, and Paradox have taken it from her. And I just there's a human cost to these practices, and yeah, capitalism, get it, but games are supposed to be fun and bring joy, and it seems that for the consumer there's fun and there's joy, but for the people that are involved in the development of these projects, for people putting all of their hard work and effort into them, they're getting nothing but kicked in the nuts by Paradox Interactive.
I think, to raise a point from something we were talking about earlier, it's about the innovation, right? I mean, when you look at the reason for them to want to produce a sequel in the first place, for them to want to take risks with franchises that clearly make the money in the first place, there needs to be a reason that you're repackaging a product that isn't just improved graphics. That is a business model. That's what Paradox has to consider. That's the risks that they take. Another game that we talk about all the time is Civilization, because it's another major player in strategy games. But you see they have a completely different business practice. Sid Meier's Civilization releases a new game once almost a decade, it seems, and then they release only 2 or 3 expansions for that game in the first place entirely. They don't treat it as a games as a service, and then while they develop and publish other titles, they take their risks by innovating with Civilization, and it either pays off and it doesn't. And I think what we've actually seen with the last 2 major titles from them, Civ 6, I mean, arguably you'd say the entire series, you lose fans as the series progresses in installments because of innovation or lack thereof. In the case of Civ 6, there was tons of people who had problems with that game at launch, and with Civ 7, this news, I mean, this is recent. So what we're seeing is people who have problems with Civilization 7, and now we have to wait another decade for Civilization 8 to either improve on those innovations or not. And so when you look at Paradox, what incentive do they have to try to make sequels every few years for their titles, whenever the real innovation that they need to improve those things and give to the fan base and receive more money from consumers are smaller expansions in the first place? So I think it's a reasonable business model in that sense. But to go back to what we're saying, they may be taking risks on these smaller developers that they're publishing. I think what they're really just trying to do is increase their portfolio and see if strategic small titles that succeed can grow in any way. If they can produce more than one Surviving Mars and turn that into a profitable franchise on the same size as something like a Victoria series or an Anno, then they're able to put that in their portfolio and keep that close to their chest. And for things that fail, like Lamplighters League or Vampire the Masquerade, I mean, they get to write that as a tax write-off.
This isn't a situation where Paradox are taking risks on these smaller studios. Paradox are having the smaller studios take the risk on their behalf. Because if the game fails, Paradox, as you say, write it off, fair enough, not a problem. They're a huge company, they've gone public, they make a lot of money, they have a lot of money in the bank. So they just get these smaller studios that don't have the financial support that Paradox has. They get them to take the risk. You know, with Lamplighters League, I think it was like 80% of the studio was let go following that game. Paradox carried on, but the developer was essentially and effectively disbanded. So where's the risk to Paradox in that?
Well, I think that's also what the general job of a publisher is, right? I mean, almost every video game publisher, by definition, isn't taking the risk themselves unless they're really financially dependent on the success of one or two teams. They're just providing their enormous investors pool to a team to produce their passion project, and they're the ones taking the risk. I think the real villainy that's coming from Paradox in the situation isn't more definitively that they're fulfilling their job as a publisher by having other people take the risk and then they either get to use it as a tax write-off or make some money back. The real problem is their handling of it morally as a publisher. I mean, when you look at the list of games that they've had, Europa Universalis, City Skylines 2, Prison Architect 2, Vampire the Masquerade, The Lamplighters League. I mean, I'm reading off of a list right now, but those are all games that have been affected strategically by Paradox's publishing practices. We recently talked about the community member that came in here, and the whole problem with City Skylines was that they were publishing based on the developer of the original City Skylines. They had the gall to innovate on their own accord, like free thinking people, and they decided to make a sequel to a game rather than continuously just pushing out DLCs for the first one. And Paradox supported their passion project for that sequel, and then whenever it didn't perform up to the standards of Paradox, they swiped the game from the original creators, handed it over to a new development studio, and what did we theorize was going to happen? That we would stop seeing major expansions for City Skylines and start seeing a new monopolized versions of DLCs releasing for them, little content packs, new songs on the radio, the small things like the species packs for Stellaris that we didn't like for City Skylines 1. That's what we thought was going to happen with City Skylines 2 now that Paradox was bringing things closer to their chest. I think that's the real villainy here. Isn't that they're not willing to innovate, and isn't that they're just being a publisher. I think that they're just purposefully manipulating the ties of the studios that they're publishing to try to pinch the worst possible pennies out of our pockets.
Yeah, it is a manipulation, but I think that the core Paradox games are your Hearts of Iron, Victoria 3, Europa Universalis, Stellaris. These are the core games which are developed. They're developed by Paradox as well as published by Paradox. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's no risks being taken with them. They're playing it very, very safe, very vanilla by releasing species packs and I mean, even with and I appreciate City Skylines is like a well, it's now an internal develop. It's now an internal development studio. Iceflake Studios is owned by Paradox anyway. It's Paradox, not but name. One thing that they do there is they release in content creator packs, so they're getting modders to create content and then selling modders' work. And just like mine's just blown by this, but let them crack on. But the issue that they have is their core titles, which they develop. Where are the sequels? And I appreciate we've now had 4 Hearts of Irons games, but that's over what 30 years or so. When are we going to see Hearts of Iron 5? Are we ever going to see Stellaris 2? Are we going to see Victoria 4? Or are we just going to see this constant DLC release strategy, and anything new and innovative is coming from these smaller developers who Paradox say, we'll publish your game for you, and if it doesn't work, you're taking the hit, we're not. Where's my Stellaris 2? That's all I want. And the technology for Stellaris is, they can't rewrite the entire code base in a patch. In order to take advantage of modern technology, they need to release a sequel.
So that's where this comes from. Al, you've had so much fun with Stellaris. You want another Stellaris too, and that's why you're so upset at Paradox.
Yes, but no. I'd be very interested. I'd be very interested to see Stellaris 2. Of course, I would, and of course, I'd buy it. Right? And I feel like such a shield for saying that. I'd buy it, and I would then invest 400 quid in DLCs for Stellaris 2 because I'm that kind of a schmuck, and I would do that, even though I would hate myself for doing it. I'm like a junkie, This is my last hit. This is my last cigarette.
Just one more. Just one more.
Yeah. I hate that I'm smoking cigarettes, but I have to do it. I have to fulfill the need. But no, it just I'll use Stellaris 2 as an example. As much as I'd love to see it, of course, I think it would be incredible to see Stellaris on modern technology and with what they can do. That was just as an example. Are we going to see more innovation in sequels? Because as I said at the start, I think I said at the start, I mean, I don't have much from memory now that I'm very, very old. The only thing that Paradox are developing is DLCs for Vampire the Masquerade and Hearts of Iron, and that's I think that's it. That's it. What else are they working on?
Well, EU5 just released.
Yeah, badly.
Yeah, okay, but I mean, it required a lot of work, and I do want to say that they did. Okay, it's the same thing. It's like it's not finished and it's buggy and but I think everyone can see that it has potential, and I don't want to I don't want to sound like a broken record. And oh no, don't worry, it has potential. Don't worry about it. Hang in there, pay a little bit more. You got it, But it does have potential because they did take some innovation and they didn't recreate the exact same game. They did mix it up a bit, and it could still fail massively, but I do think they're going to make a good game out of it.
That's the problem. That's the problem. They've released it already. Why have they not released a great game? And do you not understand where I'm coming from here? They are going to eventually make a great game.
But it's true for the previous games. It's true for all these previous games that at release were like buggy and not complete, and then eventually they got really good.
And this is the point: is that we accept this. We accept
Because
this
eventually
practice.
the games get really good.
Well, it's just Paradox. It's just what they do. It's like, well, hang on, but just because someone's always done something doesn't mean that you should accept what they've always done. We've become desensitized to badly released games from Paradox. That's what it seems like to me. Case in point, eventually it'll be a good game. I mean, have you seen some of the Steam reviews for Europa Universalis 5? I think it's mixed reviews.
Oh, it's buggy as fuck. The game is buggy
Steam.
as fuck. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's really important to remember here is that for the whole games industry at large, this is like a trend for everyone. So this isn't specific to Paradox. I mean, if you look at the three big players we've talked about so far, Creative Assembly have continuously released games the past few years that launch in a state where people are expecting they need DLCs to improve the base gameplay. And also we're even, for games we're anticipating, like 40K coming up from Total War soon, we're looking at it talking about how it's going to launch with 4 factions and how criminally low that is for a 40K game, and that it will need years of DLC support before it reaches a point that until it reaches its potential for that IP in the first place, and it should have launched that way, right? If you look at Civ, I personally think Civ 7 will be a game that people will look back on very fondly in a few more months whenever more expansions come out and more updates come out for that game to fix problems and actually innovate on whatever they have. And I also think that Paradox is going to continuously release these games because I know a Stellaris 2 is probably in development and it will come out soon. In a few months, Stellaris 1 will have been 10 years old from its launch. I just think that Stellaris 2 will release and it will see critical panning across the industry because it will release without the innovations of the first game, and also it will be buggy as hell at launch, and it will have a litany of other problems that have to be fixed after a year of patches and expansions. Because when Stellaris 1 came out 10 years ago, it may have met all of its promises, like I said before, but it released without the features of the Utopia DLC. So maybe we didn't know we needed those things, but now that we know what Stellaris is supposed to be, if Stellaris 2 comes out and it doesn't have not just features that Stellaris 1 has, but if it doesn't have certain things that we expect that it should have to innovate, we just won't like it. And this is not just specific to strategy games. The problem, though, is that for each person, it's like a pick your poison. Creative Assembly, they work on their games until they break years later, and then they refuse to address the problem. Sid Meier's waits a decade before they drop another mainline title, and then when they do, it's not worth your money at all, and it feels like they stole from you. And with Paradox, you wait a few years for the sequel to a franchise you love to come out. It comes out, and then you have to wait a few years before it's even playable or enjoyable. So it's just one of those things where this is the problem with Paradox is it's not that they refuse to work on anything. It's just that they barely innovate, and then when they do, it releases and it's broken, and then they take your money, and then they expect you to pay more money to have the additional features that should happen. They're not releasing their Utopias or their Universalis 5 expansions for free, even if they give you just a little bit of it for free.
Just one of those things. That's what I took from that. and therein lies the problem. It's just one of those things. This is the way that Paradox operates. They are a hugely successful developer and publisher, despite some bumps in the road recently. It's just one of those things. We put up with it. And the thing is, as strategy gamers, we will continue to put up with it, and we will complain, and we'll shout, and we'll whine, and we'll moan, and we'll bitch, and we'll say that it's terrible what they do. But then we'll buy the next game, and we'll buy the next DLC, and we'll play their games for 13,000 hours and love it. It's almost like Paradox can just come up to you and punch you in the face, and you'll say thank you, because we let them get away with these practices by continuing to support them as a company.
Yeah, but it's a really, really nice punch.
yeah, the best punch. Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul sort of punch. It's that kind of punch, but it's a weird paradox, isn't it? Because we don't like how they do business, but we like what comes out of that business, and we continue to then fund that business through our purchases.
I know this is a Paradox episode, but I think the counterpoint to this as well is that another company you could look at is Frontier Development. I mean, in opposition to this, they seem to continuously work on installments in their major franchises. I mean, Jurassic World Evolution 3 was just nominated for Best Strategy Sim Game at the Game of the Year Awards in 2025. And also, when you look at their installments that they're coming out with in these franchises, they're innovating. I think they have a very particular place with the games that they work on, where when you look at the differences between Planet Coaster 1 to Planet Coaster 2, they have a game that allows them to innovate. So whenever they do release tons and tons of DLC in a Paradox style for their games, they're actually able to innovate so significantly on their games because of the style of game that they work on, that it's still worthwhile to jump from the first title to the next title, or the second title to the third, just because of the innovations alone. It doesn't matter how many DLCs you pay for Planet Coaster, because Planet Coaster 2 is that much better. I mean, the customization options and the innovations they introduced are insane, and that game has been on my wish list for so long as like one of my most anticipated games just to play of the past few years when I have time. And it's just simply because they actually do get to innovate on their titles because of the nature of the games that they make. I think that Paradox doesn't afford themselves that, because they really are the kings of the sandbox when it comes to strategy games. They're producing grand strategy games with so many moving parts that for them to innovate, it just requires technological leaps and bounds. But that's not to excuse their misbehavior and mishandling of these development teams as a publisher.
Where do we go with here then with Paradox games, Tim?
I mean, like I said, I'm gonna keep playing their games, I guess, regardless.
You played Europa Universalis 5, didn't you?
Not much, but yeah, it's buggy as hell. But I do see the potential. I feel so dirty saying it, but I do see the potential of the game, and I think it's possible. It's going in the right direction. The execution is just not there at the moment.
I think Paradox sits in a lofty penthouse because they are the only ones they're the only ones in the game. They get to make the games that they do. We're in a really privileged time right now where there's like a bunch of indie teams that are working on really cool and innovative strategy games. We were just talking about Atri. I mean, that game is like a hero's twist of a 4X. I mean, that was fantastic. I really liked Endless Legend 2. But these are games that are challenging things like Age of Wonders and Civ. They're not really challenging the Crusader Kings and the City Skylines of the world. So until we start to see some things that challenge that, they're going to continuously do this. If I was really optimistic, I would want them to innovate accordingly and release. I would want them to release games when they're finished and when they feel like they have an actual innovation. But then, of course, you run into the Valve problem that we talked about earlier, where Valve will just never release another Half-Life because it's not just about the Steam, it's their company culture. They would only make a game if they can innovate. So they just refuse to innovate.
Yeah, maybe the Paradox situation is indicative of the industry at large, and maybe we're in a situation where companies like Paradox, they're almost suffering from their own success, and there is blowback for the DLCs. I mean, one of the reviews that I read on Steam for Europa Universalis 5 said, Paradox has dumped a steaming pile straight onto the players' heads. Don't make the same mistake I did, and don't give Paradox your money. Tim, the game might be playable in a year, maybe 2. Patches radically rewrite core mechanics every other week. There's 0 point learning the game today because in a month everything will work completely differently. Maybe that sums up Paradox as an entity, that in just that one paragraph where they are patching everything, changing everything, and maybe people are getting sick of it. And maybe this is why we're seeing this indie resurgence or this indie revolution or whatever, where people are more interested in what smaller developers and smaller publishers are producing. I mean, I certainly am, because I think that's where the innovation is. And I think that Paradox are almost afraid to innovate.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say my main concern would be then be honest and call it early access, and then all these issues kind of go away, because then you're being told that that you're participating in testing the game out to be continuously developed. Because I think there's great value in getting so many players to try the game out and test it, and I think they save a lot in development, because it can be tough, I think, for a lot of game designers to know where the issues are in their game, because they require so much testing, and they're too close to the game. They have, their face like right in front of it. They don't see it from a greater distance anymore. So no, I think it's incredibly beneficial to have players play the game, but then just call it early access, and then all of these concerns just evaporate.
But do we have, okay, there's 2 things here then. Would we accept early access from a AAA studio, publisher, developer, whatever, like Paradox? Would we accept that?
Why not? Why not?
Because, as you said, you as a player will be paying to beta test something. They have their own QA departments. So why expect the community to do that for you and to pay for the privilege? You don't get any special benefits from early access in terms of refunds or whatever.
Well, no, but you do get it. You get it early. You get to play it early. That's the benefit you get. Some people are like, "Oh, I can't wait to play this game," and then you're like, "Oh, you can't? All right, well, play the game for us."
No, you get it unfinished.
I mean,
It's early access. You get it unfinished. I don't know, man. I mean, if an indie developer releases a game on early access, then I'll be all over that. I think that's absolutely fine, because they don't have the financial resources that Paradox have. But if Paradox released a game early access, I would never buy an early access game from Paradox or from Creative Assembly or from Firaxis or any of these major studios, be them publishing houses or developers. It's like, why would you expect your community to beta test your game for you? I think it's a ridiculous
okay,
prospect.
Al, Stellaris 2 out on early access
No, I'm
tomorrow.
not doing it. I'm not doing it.
No.
I refuse.
Ah,
I refuse
I
to
see
do
the
it.
I think
smile
that's
on
a
your
lie. I
face.
think that's a lie.
It's not a freaking lie. It's not a lie. I'm telling you the truth. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it, because I don't think that when I play a game, and this I guess gets to the core of the problem. When I play a game, I want to have that complete experience. I don't think I think I have 1 or 2 early access games out of a Steam library of 400, 500, 600 games, because I don't like to play games which are unfinished. I don't like bugs. I like my experiences of games to be fun and error-free, and not, oh well, we just accept it because it's the early access. I don't like it, and I'd expect it, or I would accept it less from someone like Paradox, because they have no right to expect the community to play test their games for them. That's what they have their QA departments for.
I think it serves a few purposes, though.
Yeah, and they're doing it anyway, so
What are they doing anyway? Releasing
well,
Stellaris 2 on early access.
getting players to play test the game for them.
Yes, I suppose they are, but they're not. And maybe you've got a point there. At least if they released it on early access, you'd kind of know what you were doing. It was at the moment they release a game unfinished, pretend that it's finished, and we kind of accept that because that's just what Paradox does, and it's fine. Everything's fine.
I remember when Victoria 3 came out, you couldn't even finish the game because it would not run. The optimization was not there, and your computer would crash before the game could finish because the populations would get so intense. And yeah.
Yeah, Anno 117 has that problem, right? But that's just because it doesn't even have an ending.
Oh well, I mean that's a different story altogether. But yeah.
I think it serves a few purposes, though.
Yeah, go on. What are they?
Well, I mean, look at early access. It's for small teams that don't have QA, because you're suggesting that if they have their own QA department, they don't need to early access. It's for big companies to soft launch games as a service because they're releasing a game everybody wants to play as early access as an excuse to let people play it before it's developed and pay for it before it's finished. And then in Paradox's case, if they're basically already making us play early access EU5 for a few years, what they really want to do is they want to try to finish their games to the best of their ability so that they can sell us DLC. But what that means is you need to be satisfied with the game being finished up to the point that you receive it so that they can then shove DLC to enhance those gameplay mechanics down your throat. I think if they found a way to convince themselves that an early access works and that they can finish a system up to a certain point and then start giving you DLC for it once it's launched in 1.0, they would do it. I just don't think they could get the player base convinced behind that. But I think like a Stellaris 2 that sees Paradox style updates for a while, it kind of gets you on the hook. It's like a gateway drug. You get updates for Stellaris early access for a few years, then it hits 1.0, and then suddenly those updates start being $20, and then by that point you're like, okay, well, I'm hooked. I still gotta stay on the vein. So,
well, this is maybe the reason why they don't do it then, because if you are in early access, you can't release DLCs for the early access game. So maybe you're right, and maybe what they're doing is when they release their DLCs, which tend to change many core mechanics, if that was part of the early access timeline, they wouldn't be able to sell that to you. So they're essentially selling us their updates to their core game, which really should be part of their early access process.
They keep a lot of parts of the DLC free, and so you do get updates even if you don't pay anything at all. And I don't know about Stellaris, but a lot of the updates in the other games are like significant ones.
Do they just release them as they are, or do they release them alongside a paid DLC? Because that's what they do with Stellaris.
Yeah. Part of the DLC is free, and the other
Right.
part is paid. Yeah.
Okay, which
Yeah,
in
I
itself, just give us the updates. And I know they give you updates, but they give the updates not tied to a paid DLC, because you can play it without the DLC. But it's a case of, I'm sure when you get that update, it will say, oh, but you can't do this particular thing because you need this particular thing. So go and pay for this particular thing. And it's marketing.
They are still in the money-making business.
Of course they are. Welcome to capitalism, as you as you so eloquently put at the start. So they are.
And look, we've slammed them a lot this episode, but I think on a positive note, I'm going to reiterate what I said before. I think their practice with the DLCs and the way they handle the updates is pretty good, though. I mean, as consumers, as players, the nice thing about, especially with my experience with Stellaris, but I know they do the same thing for the other games, is yes, they put out a big paid expansion and a DLC around the same time. Or sorry, they put out a DLC and a free update around the same time, but they do a pretty good job of not waving the DLC in your face. I mean, are there things in Stellaris that when you click on, they directly tell you you need to have spent $20 to access? Yes. But do they ever tell you that you reach a certain limit in your free update that you need the DLC for? Not really. It's just those systems don't exist in your game at that point anymore. you actually have to have downloaded the content pack for the DLC to see them pop up in certain ways. There's no events that pop up that say you need to have paid $20 to finish this event or start this event chain. And I know in Victoria, I mean, like they're doing the same practice where like in January of 2025 they came out with Stellaris 4.0, major fixes to population, major fixes to the mathematics of the game to help with the late game lag. All things considered, the update didn't really go that smoothly, but they followed it up with a big paid expansion that was highly requested, that delivered on most of the promises that the community would actually ask for, and it came out with a bunch of free content for the base game. It followed a big 4.0 update that was also pretty substantial, and at no point are they basically saying like you need to have paid the 20, 30, $40 to be able to access the best parts of this, even though that's true. They just don't really wave it in your face. And they do the same thing with Victoria. I mean, Charters of Commerce has really positive reviews. Tim was praising it in a previous episode for his, best game of 2025. And so it's kind of like, they do the same thing with Hearts of Iron. I just feel like their practice for that is pretty good. And I don't think that the games that we're getting from these expansions are the games we would have actually been promised a while ago. There's a world in which between Victoria 3 and Victoria 4, we would have never gotten the mechanics of Charters of Commerce. It required them to have a team to do that. And Stellaris, I'm not sure for the other games, but Stellaris has a dedicated team of internal developers, however small that is, whose job is entirely just to moderate and work on major, like, even number updates, like 4.0 and 5.0. All they do is just work out those bug fixes that people have talked about since launch. And they don't even work on DLCs or content. They don't work on the free part that comes with the DLC. They work on just the base game updates, and that's pretty fantastic. There's not a lot of other strategy games, let alone games in general, that do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to be positive as well, but and I hear what you're saying. But when they released 4.0, they released a paid DLC alongside of it as well. So I appreciate there may be a team that's working on these updates, but they're working alongside the team that are producing the DLC. So it's a bit disingenuous to say that that's all they're working on and it's all very altruistic. It isn't. It's that they're working to make this update and make sure it works alongside this thing which is going to make the money. But and I don't begrudge them making money. I don't. They're a company. It's what they do. They have people that they have to they have to satisfy with dividend checks or whatever it might be. So I get that. But no, let's be positive. I will not stop playing Paradox games the same as Tim. Okay, I'm. This is kind of. I haven't played Stellaris since February 2025, and I'm kind of thinking maybe I'm kind of getting a bit of an itch to go back and play it again, and get the latest DLC and explore the whole thing. But if I do that, I'll probably do it on the subscription model that they have. There's I think it's $8.95 or something to get access to all of the DLCs on subscription, or you can pay I think £25 for a 6-month subscription. I might do that in order to give me access to everything. So we're all going to continue to play Paradox games. We all still love Paradox games. I guess this has just been an opportunity for a bit of a rant. We don't really want to change what they're doing because it's what they've always done, and we're used to it. Nobody makes games like Paradox Interactive does, strategy games.
And I think it's more than a rant, right? Because we wouldn't even care or talk about this if we didn't care about the games that they make. And personally, I actually feel like boycotting a game or not playing it outright isn't actually the best way to make your voice heard necessarily. Like in some cases, sure, but us in solidarity of anger towards Paradox, just never playing one of their games or never purchasing another DLC isn't really going to fix the issue. But whether our voices get lost or not, right? We're just 3 more blokes talking about our problems with Paradox that among many mixed reviews, negative reviews across Steam and other platforms, their handling of console support for multiple of their titles, things like that, like entire player bases they're isolating. There are lots of ways that they're getting negative feedback, and their company itself has seen tons of negative press in the past 4 years. So it's just important that we're doing our part at the very least to sit here on a podcast episode complaining about the parts of Paradox we don't like. And that's important too. I mean, rant or not, we're clearly, this is our Steam review, the 3 of us. We're making it very clear that I will keep playing Stellaris. I will keep playing Victoria. I will be purchasing Age of Wonders 4. But it's pretty shitty, Paradox.
It's a public service, isn't it? What we're saying is Paradox make great games. We enjoy their games, but you need to know what's going on behind the scenes so that you can make an informed decision on whether you wish to continue to play those games, which we all will continue to do.
And I did, while we're towards the end here, I wanted to make a point about one of the last episodes that I listened to from us. I don't remember if this was the games of 2025 or I'm not sure exactly which episode it was, but you mentioned it was the City Builders episode. You talked about City Skylines and the whole mod support problem. I think to address something that you brought up on that episode, I think mod support is vastly overstated as significant to developers. I think many players overstate the importance of mod support for a developer. I think Paradox could probably give far less of a care to the support for its modding community or its inclusion or its accessibility in that way, because they don't necessarily make money from mods like that. It's a very small percentage of their overall revenue. They're going to only be able to invest money, and then it buys a little bit more loyalty from their community. And I'm sure I'm going to get a bunch of comments negatively criticizing this take from our YouTube comments and our community. But I feel like there are definitely companies that morally lean into it. I'm not saying the modding is bad. I'm not saying they shouldn't do those things. Absolutely. It's like, that's altruistic. They're going out of their way to support their modding community, give them the tools in the first place, and so many engines don't even support modding in the first place now. Unreal especially.
Man. Don't be so naive.
I really don't think.
Yeah, don't be so naive. You're such a young pup. It's not altruistic.
No. I mean, look.
Come on, man. Mods extend the life. Mods extend the lifespan of a game. They give people mods. They give people the opportunity to make mods, and therefore people continue to play their game. And if they're continuing to play their game, then they're paying attention to when DLCs come out and they buy more DLCs. This idea that they're doing mods out of the kindness of their heart is, nah, come on, you're not that naive.
Also, I think it can teach the developers too. I think I've seen lots of features in many games that were mods that were then later taken by the developers and put into the core game.
Absolutely. I mean, its purpose as a community tool is without a doubt, like, that is 100% considered. It's not like I'm saying modding is unimportant. I just think that if you're thinking of a big business like Paradox, I mean, look, outside of strategy games, I love Bethesda, and one of their biggest things is that they make huge open world RPGs, and they purposefully stick with the same engine to make it as accessible as possible for one of the largest modding communities in the world behind Skyrim to stay there. And, like, it's not overstated just how important that is for the success of that game and its longevity. But also, you have to be a particular kind of developer to care about supporting that modding community where it affects your bottom line business decisions, because in Paradox's case, right, they're doing the same thing that Bethesda has eventually done, and they're trying to monetize their mods. They're trying to find ways to put it on their own platforms to get money from their community. And in the case of City Skylines, they're just taking the modding community and then they're packaging it and selling it to the player base when it was previously free. It's not altruistic, you're right, but they're also not doing it in a case of, let's make this as accessible as possible. It is, how do we find a way to outsource this foreign labor force and repackage it to sell it to the player base? And that's what that is, and that's also villainous in a way. It would be wonderful if every developer in the world could support their modding community and act like it affects their bottom line so significantly that they prop it up as much as possible. But I just don't think that Paradox is so concerned with modding being an important part between City Skylines 1 to 2 to affect too many decisions, except for the fact that now they get to sell the mods even more.
Okay, and on that high point, I think we'll leave it there, gentlemen, because I'm conscious of time. Okay, so thanks as ever, Jack, Tim, for joining me to flag off Paradox Interactive for an hour. It's been the most fun I've had today, so thanks very much. Thanks also to our listeners. You're the reason why we do this. Visit criticalmovspodcast.com. and you'll find out all the ways you can get in touch with us. Remember to subscribe or follow on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you next time. So thanks for listening. Take it easy. Goodbye.